This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everyone. This is Lindsay Kiesler, President and CEO of your chamber. Thank you for taking the time to hop on here with us. It is 10 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and get rolling out of respect of your time. But this morning we have Levi Kinnard. He is an economic development specialist with the North Carolina District Office of the SBA, and he is going to be talking about the economic industry or injury disaster loan. And he's also going to touch a little bit on the payroll protection program. But first, before I introduce him, I want to thank our partners for helping us to create this content for you. The Economic Development Corporation, Catawba County, also the Small Business Technology and Development Center, and the CBTC Small Business Center. So thank you to those partners. A couple of housekeeping items. Please keep your phone on mute. And then also, and the mute is, I believe, in the bottom left-hand corner. Or if you're calling in by phone, just ensure that your cell phone is on mute, just out of respect of the callers. We are recording this webinar so that we can make it available after the call. So each participant will receive a copy of the recording, and then we will put it out for all those that could not join us live so they can receive this content. So feel free to also forward it along. Additionally, questions. So Levi will be giving a presentation. We did receive your pre-questions, so thank you to those of you that submitted those. If you have any questions, use the chat box. So we're not going to do live Q&A via voice or audio, but if you have a question anytime throughout the presentation, put it in that chat box, and then Nathan Curate, who's here with me, who's running all the technical aspects of this call, he is going to be facilitating Q&A at the end after Levi has concluded his presentation. So like I said, if you have a question, burning question, put that in the chat box, and we'll see if we can get to as many of them as possible. If for some reason we do not get to your question, we will provide a written response to you either directly or for the benefit of all the participants. So again, thank you for joining us, and I will introduce our speaker. So it is a pleasure to introduce Levi Kinnard. He's an economic development specialist in the North Carolina District Office of the Small Business Administration. He joined the North Carolina District Office in March 2018 from the San Diego District Office. Before working for the SBA, Levi founded and managed 2 California corporations in prosthetics manufacturing and government contract consulting. He holds a BS in accounting and a Master's of Business Taxation from the University of Southern California. So Levi, again, thank you for your time, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Lindsay. I appreciate your invitation to be on the call today. And I want to thank all the resource partners that helped put this call together. It's important that we get as much information to the small business community as possible. We understand that these are very troubling times for small businesses, and we just wanted to let you know that the SBA is here to assist them. I'm with the U.S. Small Business Administration. This is an agency that is specifically dedicated to assisting small businesses in non-crisis times and during crisis. Even during now and before the coronavirus came onto the scene, we do provide counseling services through our resource partners, of which you have great resources in your area, for instance, like the SBTDC. We do want you to reach out to them at any time. There are boots on the ground. They're assisting small businesses and putting together these applications for the disaster loans that I'm going to be speaking about. Not only that, I think that they are a great resource and looking at your business and how it can or how it needs to transform to meet current conditions. So these are free counseling sessions. It's not going to cost you anything to come in and see them, and it's always a great resource to be able to have a sounding board for your business. So we do have the SBTDCs. We also have the SCORE counselors. There are 4 women business centers in the state, and there's 1 veteran business outreach center. In addition to that, even more than the disaster loans that I'm going to be speaking about, we do have the 7A loan program, which is the proceeds can be used for an array of business needs. It's probably the most flexible business loan program that we have. We do guarantee to commercial banks 85% up to 150,000 and 75% up to $5 million. And so that does encompass quite a bit of business financing needs. It's a highly utilized program. I don't have the 2019 numbers, but in 2018 we did upwards of $850 million just in North Carolina, about $12 billion nationally. So this is a well-known program by most commercial banks. Most banks have agreements with us, and the reason I'm mentioning this is kind of segue into the payroll protection program that we're going to speak about in a little bit, because those lenders that do have those agreements are the ones that will be able to let these loans out afterwards. We also have the 504 loan program, which is real estate specific. Those are given out through CDC organizations, and the guarantee amounts do change a little bit. But if you are looking to expand even in these times, reach out to us and we can get you that information. But we also deal with government contracting programs, preference programs. If you're looking to get into government contracting, we do have business opportunity specialists in our office, and we do have PTAC counselors co-located with the SBTDCs. So that's what SBA does on a normal basis, but we also come into play during disasters. Now, disasters, they up to this point have looked differently. So if you had, for instance, like during Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Matthews, you might have a governor, declaring a few counties as disaster areas, and then the businesses within those counties would be able to apply for disaster loans. Well, this is a nationwide pandemic, and so you have upwards into the millions of applications coming through SBA for these disaster loans, and so we will be talking about that. But to come to the coronavirus, the SBA has put together through the CARES Act and individually slightly modifying the economic injury disaster loan, which I have the authority to speak about authoritatively, and then the very generally, we don't have specific guidance from Washington, D.C. on a unified message yet, so I can't speak to very specifically about this loan. I do know a little bit about it, but I want to make sure that this is accurate information. So we can hit on it a little bit high level today, but we do know that the chamber has a call this Friday to talk about it in detail. So you will end up getting all the information you need about both loans. So to start off with, the SBA does have the economic injury disaster loans. Now, these are working capital loans for small businesses. and most private nonprofits, 501Cs, Ds, and Es. There are a couple of restrictions. If you're in any of these categories, please reach out to us. But on the nonprofit side, what would be sort of a restricted purpose would be somebody teaching a religious-based curriculum. But for instance, like a church that provides child care services and receives revenue, and that source would qualify under for those purposes. So these are for small businesses and most private nonprofits. And these are businesses that have been directly or indirectly affected by the coronavirus. We know that not every business is a customer interface, but we do know that there's a ripple effect all the way from the storefront, all the way to the wholesaler, all the way back to the manufacturer of the products that are sold to customers. And so anybody in that supply chain can qualify. You don't have to really establish that you've been directly impacted. You can just show that as a result of the coronavirus, that there has been substantial economic injury. Now, the way that they are assessing these loans is first on credit history. Now, we know that small businesses are taking a hit right now. They don't have the same revenue levels as they did pre-crisis. And so then maybe they're not able to pay all the bills that they did when they weren't affected. And so I want everyone to know that when it comes to this credit assessment, to leave it in the Office of Disaster Assistance, let them make that credit decision for you. Well, they're going to be looking at your historical credit history, and these are fairly relaxed eligibility criteria. If that's your concern, if you don't think that you're going to have the credit history to apply and be approved for one of these loans, we suggest that you still apply. So the credit history, the credit elsewhere requirements, these have been relaxed. The next one is the ability to repay. They will be looking at your historical data, your historical revenue levels, your cost basis, and they are structuring these loans in the most accommodating way that they can to ensure that the most small businesses as possible receive the financing they need to maintain operations equivalent to what they had pre-crisis. So that's the second eligibility criteria. The third is that your business is located in a disaster zone. This is sort of a moot point because almost all the states in the United States have been declared disaster zones. North Carolina has, and so if your physical business location is located in North Carolina, you're going to meet that eligibility criteria. I have been receiving some questions from smaller businesses that don't have necessarily a physical presence, like pet walking services. You still do have a physical presence wherever you do your accounting, your marketing. If it's just a laptop at your kitchen table, then that means that your physical business location is your home. And if that's located in North Carolina, you're going to meet that eligibility criteria. So the terms of the loan, this loan does go up to $2 million. There's a 3.75% interest for small businesses and 2.75% interest to qualifying nonprofit organizations. And the terms of the loan do go up to 30 years. And so when the Office of Disaster Assistance is looking at the working capital needs for your business, they are going to take into account what your organization is going to be able to afford per month. And so you and the loan officer will be negotiating these terms. If the working capital needs that you have are quite large, it's extended upwards towards the 2 million mark, but it's going to be tough to make that monthly installment payment. They will elongate those terms out to the 30 years so that you can, in fact, afford those monthly payments. And so that's a really good feature of these loans. They are you have to be considered small by your NAICS code, but if your loan is going to be below 500,000 or less, they're really accepting your assessment if you're small or not. You know, what they're trying to do is process as many loans as quickly as possible. And so if you don't know your NAICS code, you can definitely reach out to one of our resource partners, specifically the SBTDC. They can help you determine your NAICS code and then what is the size standard associated with that NAICS code. These working capital loans, they can, you know, the use of the proceeds for the economic injury disaster loan, it's pretty flexible. You can use these for, you know, fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, or any other bill that you could have been able to pay had this disaster not occurred. And so that's a little bit different than what we're going to talk about later, like the payroll protection program. I think that the working capital uses for the economic injury disaster loan are much more flexible. But some things that you can't use this loan for is to replace lost sales or profits. You can't use it for business expansion. You can't use it to consolidate debt. So remember, this is a working capital loan. They want you to be able to maintain the same level of operations as you had pre-crisis to post-crisis. The coronavirus will eventually subside, and this loan is in place so that business doesn't have to decrease its operations and its worker level to meet these current revenue streams, and then have to ramp back up later on once the disaster subsides. So know that that's the purposes and the uses of the economic injury disaster loan. Now there is collateral requirements for the economic injury disaster loan, and that's different than the payroll protection program. There is a $25,000 unsecured maximum. Below $25,000, it's pretty much a signature loan. And so you're not going to have to, even if you have business or personal collateral, you won't have to put that and secure the loan if it's below $25,000. Above $25,000 up to the $2 million maximum, what personal and business collateral that you do have, you will need to secure that loan with it. Now, you don't have to fully collateralize that loan. You're not going to be denied for your inability to fully collateralize it. So let's say that you needed $1 million and you're only able to collateralize $500,000. They're not going to deny the loan based on that collateral level, and they'll give you what you need or what they expect that you need for the next 6 months worth of working capital. So what is the difference between the economic injury disaster loans and the new payroll protection program? So the economic injury disaster loans, these are loans that are coming directly from SBA. You're applying to SBA, we're the ones that are processing it, and we're the ones distributing those loans. The payroll protection program, these are going to come through commercial banks in the same way that our regular 7A loans do. And so for a payroll protection program loan, you will be going directly to a commercial bank that has an agreement with SBA, and they'll make their assessment and let the loan that way. So you're going to be, for the economic injury disaster loans, you're dealing with SBA. Payroll protection program, you're going to be dealing with commercial banks. A couple other things on the economic injury disaster loans is that there's no cost to apply for these loans. There's no obligation to take these loans, even if you're approved for them. So we really want, if you think that you're going to need working capital to keep your business going without reducing your operations, we suggest that you apply for this loan because there's no penalty for doing so. And it's they've made it more simplistic to do so. We've had a couple of instances where we've been contacted and small businesses are saying that, consultants have reached out to them and say, hey, this is such a difficult process that you need us to apply for this loan for you. And by the way, it's going to cost you $2,500 to $5,000. This is just not the case. You can definitely apply for this loan on your own, and especially having resources like the SBTDC out there, which will help you, get the components of the loan application together, help you create your statement of need in the 1368. You should not have to pay anything to apply for this loan. So you don't need a consultant to do this. Also, for businesses that have been affected by past disasters, this is not going to preclude you from being eligible for this current disaster loan. So don't let that discourage you as well. There are several different forms. So this is a very fluid situation. Like I said before, in past disasters, you may have a few thousand businesses try to apply for this loan. This has kind of changed. So over the weekend, because of the influx of disaster loan applications, they had to revamp the whole system. As of yesterday, there is a brand new website, online application website. What I can do right now is I'm going to place that link into the chat box so everyone can see it. One moment. No. And that will take you directly to the online application. It's brand new. Some questions that we've been having are, okay, if I apply for the loan under the old portal and I did get a confirmation number, do I need to do it again? No. What if I started to apply underneath the old portal, but I didn't finish and now the new portal has come up? Do I need to start my application over? Unfortunately, yes, but it's going to be much easier and much more streamlined. I think the website they've done a very good job over the weekend with recreating that. Another factor that I think that needs to be discussed is that there was an advance portion in the old application where you needed to apply and check the box if you wanted an advance on that loan. At that point, it was sort of an option if you did want the advance. then there was a $10,000. So we're starting to see companies come back to us and say, hey, there's $10,000 in my account now, but that's not all the working capital that I needed. That is not all that you're going to get. That is just an advance. And later on, after you're approved, the remainder will be sent to you. They just wanted to get money into your hands so that you could meet working capital needs today. So I did put the direct site on there for the online application, the new online application. So that has changed. Definitely use that one. Utilize our partners. We want you to reach out to your loan officers as often as possible. Processing these loans, it's not a very long turnaround. They're looking at between 8 and 21 days. If the loan officer has everything that they need to process it, that it's not going to take very long. But if they do need additional information, that's the only thing that's going to hold your application up. So definitely continually check with the processing center if there's any additional information that they need to process your loan so that it doesn't hold it up. But after they're done processing and you agree on the terms of the loan with the loan officer, then distribution will happen within 5 days. So we're not talking about months and months to get this working capital loan. We're talking about a month at the longest, and it's usually less than that. So now I just want to briefly talk about high level payroll protection program. So I can't get into specifics because I don't want to give out misinformation. That's why I have to kind of wait until I get official guidance from Washington, D.C. about this factor. But a couple of things that I can say is that you will be dealing with commercial lenders. Those lenders will have to use the E-Trans system. If they've been doing 7A loans in the past, they'll know exactly what this is. So if you have a relationship with a bank that has been doing 7A loans, they're going to be a great resource because they're not going to have to apply to be an SBA lender prior to letting these new PPP loans go out. See what else I can say without getting in trouble. You will have to apply for these loans by June 30th. There is a component of loan forgiveness or conversion to a grant. The general terms of the loan are 10 years. So in comparison to the economic injury disaster loans of a potential term of 30 years, these are going to be 10. The difference in interest rate is that for the PPP loans, you're going to have 4%, whereas under the economic injury disaster loans, those are 3.75. It's a little bit more restrictive on what you can utilize those funds for. You have your payroll, rent, utilities, and that's about the extent of it. Whereas the economic injury disaster loan, you can use it for any working capital needs. And so there is a calculation on the size of these amounts. I'm not going to go into that calculation as of this point until I receive official guidance, but look within the next 48 to 72 hours. You're going to see a lot of information come out about this, and like I said, on Friday the chamber is going to have a call to bring you all the up-to-date and accurate information. So what I'll do now is I'll open this up to Q&A. And thank you.
Levi, great information. I was sitting here writing down a lot of questions that came in here right at the end. Now I'll just kind of tick through these and just, I'll start first with the $10,000 question. Someone had asked, and I've seen some information myself, that's an advance and a kind of an emergency cash advance. But is that something that is rolled into the life of the loan, or is that forgiven? Can you explain a little bit more to that initial advance if that's a needed thing?
Yes. So I was having discussions with colleagues yesterday. Now on the website, it does say that this advance is going to turn into a grant. But there's two different scenarios. What if you're eventually not approved for the loan, or if you are approved for the loan? My understanding at this point is that if you're not approved for the loan, it turns into a grant. But if you're approved, it rolls into the loan. But this is something I'm going to need to get a little bit more direction for, because I've seen from a couple of different sources some conflicting information, and I do want to get the most accurate information out there. So what I can do is I will look into that. I'll get Lindsay that information, and then somehow they can get that out to the constituents.
It's funny, I was reading through some things yesterday. That exact question came into my office, and the information I came across was if you do not get approved for a loan, it in essence becomes a forgiven grant of $10,000, and so I appreciate that's something you all admittedly are still trying to figure out.
Yes,
and struggle with. So.
yes, that's what we're seeing. But then I was just reading from a Senate committee meeting that said that it's going to be a grant regardless. So I think at this point, the best advice that I could give is for the economic injury disaster loan, assume that if you are approved, you'll have to repay back that loan. Also, and something I forgot to mention is that there is a deferment on this loan. You're not going to have to start paying that economic injury disaster loan back for a full year. So that's going to help you, get your footing underneath you before you start to have to make those installment payments. And they're going to elongate those repayment terms upwards of 30 years. So that those monthly payments are very low. But as for the $10,000 advance, I'll need to get some more information about that before I can say anything definitively.
During that year period of deferment, are you accruing interest during that period?
No.
Oh, even better. Okay. I had a question for someone that actually was in process of setting up their business. And so the business was supposed to open the end of this month. How do you measure 2.5 times my payroll? This is a payroll protection program. If I never actually had a payroll.
So, like I said, I'm not allowed to speak, authoritatively on the PPP program, and that's what he's referring to, because that's the PPP is going to be based on your payroll. So the amount of the loan will have to, it is a calculation of your payroll is going to end up being the amount that you receive. And so, just looking at it very generally and just a very high level, it looked like they're going to look at your annual payroll, divide that by 12, multiply that by 2.5. So if you did not have a payroll expense, then that monthly payroll or that yearly payroll would be zero, and anything times zero is zero. So that will impact your ability to get a PPP. loan. Whereas the economic injury disaster loan, that's not how those calculations are made. They're going to be looking at all your historical costs or all your existing working capital needs. That may be a better route for that particular business.
Got a question about this person referenced section 1105. Loan forgiveness defines the covered period as March 1st of 2020 through June 30, 2020, but lenders keep talking about only forgiving 8 weeks. Why?
So what I can say is that I want to commend your constituent base for being, fairly informed. They're talking about the policy under the CARES Act, and that is also a PPP question. But what they're looking at, and like I said, very high level, not allowed to speak authoritatively about this, but that 8 weeks they're referring to is that's the amount of time, what you expend on that 8 weeks after loan distribution will be eventually what converts to a grant, and then any of the remaining loan funds will convert to a 10-year term loan.
I will remind folks for some of this stuff, especially around the payroll protection program, we will have a separate webinar this Friday at 11 a.m. It's going to feature Congressman McHenry and several of the folks that helped write some of those parts of the bill that was ultimately signed. And so we're going to go into a lot more detail kind of related to the stimulus-related programs on Friday. I think the Chamber's already sent out an invite through their newsletter. I know our newsletter with the invitations going out later this afternoon. So you should see some of that if you really want to dig more into that than this morning, because I see some of the questions actually are more related to that. So I may not address those exactly here. I'd invite you on Friday to do that. One question that came in is, how do you figure the dollar amount you might need for an economic disaster loan?
Okay, that's a good question. So when you start to fill out that application, I know that the previous forms before they created this new online portal is that you had the 2202 statement of liabilities, and then you had the 1368 that would kind of talk, where you would create your narrative about your needs. So what they're going to look at is anything that's considered working capital that you were paying pre-crisis. What they're doing is they're taking that amount, that's what the business needs to operate, and draw that out for 6 months, and then that would be your working capital needs for that time. As long as you were willing to put up what personal and business collateral you had, then that's where that's how the amount of the loan is determined, and the eligibility criteria, the collateral criteria to receive it.
I got a question about there's mixed messaging in terms of, can businesses participate in both the economic injury and the PPP program? Are they eligible to do both?
Yeah, that's also information I'm sort of having to hold off on, and I think your call on Friday will probably give a much clearer basis, but some higher level stuff, what I've heard is that if you've received monies prior to March 30th, you can have both. If your economic injury disaster loan monies came in after March 30th, you have to choose one. So that depends. I'm not a lawyer, but at this point, it depends.
I think we're all turning into lawyers.
I think we all. Hey, we've got the time to do so at home.
We respect you. Someone wrote a question, is all of this money coming from the government stimulus, and who is setting the loan percentage?
Are you talking about the interest rates?
I'm not exactly sure there.
So the question about where is this money coming from? So for the economic injury disaster loan, the money is coming directly from the federal government. For the PPP loans, these are going to come from commercial banks with 100% SBA guarantee. So it's going to come from banks, but if any of these loans are defaulted on under any circumstance, then the SBA will be reimbursing the banks, commercial banks. Yeah.
One question I know myself that I always want to set people up for, hopefully for success. If someone's hearing this, they're now thinking, this may be something our business needs. What should be their next step? What would you recommend? Who either should they contact someone or should they be pulling information together? What would be the next best step?
The next step, if I was in that area, the first thing I would do is reach out to the SBTDC. They've got, I was looking onto their website, and they've got some great trainings about putting together complete and accurate applications, talking about what's going to be in those applications, creating the narratives and then the 1368. But I would reach out to them, and if they think that they're going to need these funds, let's say that they haven't necessarily felt the impact from the coronavirus yet, but they know that it's coming. For instance, like they see in April, their revenues are coming from events where people have to congregate together, which they can no longer do. Those are being canceled. We're seeing that revenues are going to decrease. I'm not going to have the funds to pay my working capital. My suggestion to that business is to apply for this loan now. Reach out to our resource partners, get that application in, and even if you don't end up needing it, you don't have to take the loan. I think it's a very prudent step to get that loan application in as quickly as possible.
Had a question that do self-employed qualify?
Absolutely. So yes, self-employed. That I'm assuming they're referring to a sole proprietorship. Yes, they do qualify as well. They don't have to have a corporate structure to apply for these economic injury disaster loans.
I'm making sure I've covered everything. Gotten a lot of good questions and appreciate you answering them so well. I'm not seeing any immediate questions. If one comes in here at the last, I'll definitely ask it. But Levi, any last thoughts before I close out?
I just want to thank you guys for the opportunity to get this information out. I kind of want to say sorry that I had to be so ambiguous on the PPP program at this point, but no information is almost better than misinformation. If we don't want companies making business decisions on faulty information, and that's kind of why I held off. But I think that you guys are a really great resource. The fact that you're going to have a call on Friday with policy experts that are going to answer all these questions for you. I think that you're a great resource for your small business community, and so I'm thankful that I got to be a part of that.
Awesome. No, thank you very much for your time. I think one question did come in, and I think it may be up in the chat feature. Someone had asked what site we should reach out to first if we think we might apply for a loan. I missed it. Yep, looks like she answered it herself. She saw that you put that direct link up there. and speaking of a great resource, as you said, there's some awesome partners here across the state and locally. Janelli from the SBTDC and Jeff Newville from the Small Business Center at CBCC. I see they're on the call. Janelli even put a link to, if you want to request counseling with them directly, I'd highly encourage that. They can walk you through a lot of this and help answer some of those questions for you. This is a very trying and changing times right now, and I appreciate Levi coming out and giving us the latest and greatest. And obviously, something that came out Friday, we're going to talk about this Friday. It's a 1,000+ page bill, and there's just so much coming at you all right now, and we're trying to do our best to give you the best information. So I very much appreciate what you said about giving you the right information, not misinformation necessarily. So thank you for doing that. With that, everyone, this will be recorded. It is right now. We're going to send this out later and put it up on the Chamber's website, the EDC's website, all our different entities out here if you want to rewatch it. And I look like Kim just put up a link if anyone wants to go ahead and register for Friday's webinar. Appreciate you doing that, Kim. With that, if you've got questions after the fact, please send them our way. Thank you on behalf of Lindsay, Kim, and the rest of the Chamber staff, and Nathan Turret. I'm here with Catawba County EDC. And again, thank you, Levi, for your time. Awesome job this morning. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their Tuesday. Thank you all very much.